Always a good idea to start with a quick under the hood health check. For example, is there any coolant in the upper radiator hose? It sure doesn't feel like it. Okay, lucky, we do have coolant. How about oil? It's full and it's clean, so that's a good sign. So I've at least checked the basics before I go take this for a road test. It does have a little bit of a coolant leak down there, maybe, or maybe an oil leak. Looks like an engine oil leak from the intake manifold. Well, today I've got an older vehicle, a 2002 Chevy, what is this, a Trailblazer, 4.3 liter V6. The customer thinks that it has a slipping transmission. The rider has driven the vehicle. He thinks that it's got a plugged exhaust. The technician, that's me, just thinks this whole world's gone crazy. Anyways, we're going to find out who's right. Is it a slipping transmission? Is it a plugged exhaust? I'm going to do a quick health check under the hood, and then we're going to just dive right in and check codes. Okay, let's get started. I'm using a Matco Maximus 4.0 today. This is, let's see, I'm pretty sure it's an S10. It's a four-door S10 with a pickup bed, so it's whatever that is. It's like a S10 Blazer or S10 Trailblazer. 2-speed active. What kind of transfer case? We've got a 2-speed active. Health report, we'll just scan everybody. The only thing that I really need to worry about scanning right now is the engine controller. 7 codes in the powertrain system. So mass airflow, performance, engine coolant temperature, and looks like all 4 oxygen sensors are reporting low voltage or heater performance, engine misfire. So we got the customer that thinks it's a slipping transmission, and we got the rider that thinks it's a plugged exhaust. And we've got codes that suggest the engine may have something going on with the mass airflow sensor, maybe have a coolant problem with the coolant, the thermostat, and we've got some oxygen sensor codes. So let's just go right into the PCM data. So I'm just going to get it set up. Engine data, fuel trim data. What do I want? I'm going to go take it for a drive and do a wide open throttle acceleration test. So basically I'm going to do a volumetric efficiency test with the scan tool. So I want engine load, engine speed. I want to know what the upstream sensors are doing on both banks, whether they're rich or lean. I want the map sensor pressure. I want the mass airflow sensor data. I think that's, and then we'll put throttle just so you can see what I was doing. So we'll start with this. Okay, and then graph. Okay, the engine is now running. Interesting. I thought I saw the map sensor climbing, which would suggest a plugged exhaust. And I haven't even driven it yet. I'm just sitting here idling. And it almost looked like that was sloping upwards. Oxygen sensor, bank 1 and 2. We started off at about where we're supposed to, right in the middle. That's kind of your bias. And on bank, which one is this? Bank 1, it's starting to just flatline lean. Let me give it some engine RPM. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to go drive it. I'm going to perform a wide open throttle test, which means I'm just going to hold the pedal to the floor, wide open throttle, maximum throttle, and I want to make sure whether these oxygen sensors peg rich or peg lean. If they peg lean, I know that I'm working with a fuel starvation problem. If they peg rich, that means that I most likely have all the fuel in the world that I need, and if I have a lack of power at that point, that means I have something else going on. So we're just gonna quickly and easily determine whether this is a fuel supply problem or not. I started a recording. I've never tried this function on this tool, so I don't know what's actually gonna happen. Is it gonna save like a screen recording, or is it just gonna save the actual data? That's what I don't know. Guess I'll just try it. So it shifted first, second. Really doesn't feel that bad. Third gear. They're saying it has a lack of power, but at the moment it seems to be driving normally. I'm gonna slow down. I'm gonna come almost to a stop and then just mash it and then find out. We're gonna find out if it has a lack of power or not. Slowing down. Oh, lost traction. It's kind of wet today. I'll have to do a rolling start. Yeah, now I can feel it. Lack of power. Okay, so basically, when we're trying to accelerate under a heavy load, this is what happened to my upstream oxygen sensors. I had a complete flatline lean condition. So I guess that means I need to go back to the shop and take a fuel pressure measurement and tell him he probably needs a fuel pump. Maybe I'll even scope the fuel pump and see what it looks like. Actually, now just sitting here after I just did that, I can actually hear the fuel pump. I can hear it go. It doesn't sound very happy, so yeah, most likely we're going to need a fuel pump. So I'll make sure that the customer fills the tank to the full before we do it too, okay? Of course, didn't work very well, did it? Yeah, most likely we would just have a bad fuel pump. Back here in the shop, fuel pump relay. Just gotta remove that. Okay. Never gonna see that one again. And it didn't just fall down, it fell way down. So I think I'm gonna have to take some panels loose to get that relay, but that's okay. So I've got this relay jumper, 87 and 30, those are the load terminals, so I just need to stick it in the hole. And then I'm going to take my fused jumper wire and power up across the load terminals I can actually hear the pump run. So now I can power the pump, and I can clamp my meter around this wire and take a fuel pump measurement. Well, that pump sounds nasty. And I'll clamp on. Clamp upside down. The lab scope set up for about a 10 amp measurement, because that's about what we'd expect. About to power it up. Wow, you can hear that nasty pump. So drawing just over 7 amps. Let's pause that. And then I can shut the pump down. Why isn't it pausing? There we go. Shut the pump down. I can already tell you it needs a fuel pump because this pattern looks pretty rough. I mean, you're seeing uneven humps here. So I can already tell you it needs a fuel pump. Just for A, it sounds terrible. B, the pattern's bad. C, we've got a lack of fuel when we're accelerating. So, I mean, I don't even think I need to do a follow-up and do a fuel pressure check, but maybe I could just for the video's sake. Someone might cry if I don't. I haven't even used a fuel pressure tester in a long time, actually. This is like old school stuff. We don't even do this anymore. We've got fuel pressure sensors and scan tools. Okay. Get this hooked up real quick. There it is, I can see it. It's way down there. To get the camera to focus on that. There it is, way down there. I'll get it. Actually, look, I got lucky and I was able to get it to stick to a magnet. Look at that. Stick the relay back in. Start it up. That's interesting. The fuel pump sounds terrible and the pattern is terrible, yet it has actually okay pressure. Clearly we do have a lack of, some sort of lack of fuel. Disconnect that mass air sensor. Yeah, we still have a lack of fuel. Maybe we have a lack of fuel volume too. See how much fuel volume we get in about 30 seconds. Wow, it's too much pressure for me to push the button. There we go. Oh, volume actually does not look bad. So fuel pressure and volume. I'm gonna stop there because I'm overflowing. What do you think? Am I gonna pass my UA? This actually smells, it doesn't really smell like gasoline. It smells very much like alcohol or ethanol. So could this be a case of if the fuel is not volatile enough and we've got enough pressure, we've got enough volume, but maybe we just don't have fuel that is flammable enough? That'd be very interesting. Okay, luckily I have access to a fuel composition tester. This is a normal test result with nothing in it. I'm gonna pour my fuel sample in. So we got about 60 hertz, and they want you to subtract 50. So it looks like we've got about 10% ethanol content. So that's actually normal. So we've got acceptable fuel pressure, acceptable fuel volume, acceptable fuel composition. I wonder if we have something else going on. Maybe I need to look at that mass airflow sensor. Why do we have a lack of fuel? Could it be plugged injectors or? Another thing that I noticed when I was trying to accelerate was that it had a sputtering and kind of a stumbling to go along with it. As you can see, it's got factory plug wires, so probably could use a tune-up also, plugs, wires, cap, and rotor, but that's not really going to cause a lean condition. So it's been a while since I even worked on one of these old Vortec V6s, and I got to thinking, well, they have poppet injectors, or at least they originally did from the factory. They had poppet fuel injectors, and then later they had a port fuel injector upgrade. And I got to thinking, well, if they don't have the minimum fuel pressure, those poppets won't open. And I had better actually check the specification. The specification, key on engine off for fuel pressure, is 60 to 66 psi. So when I just measured it with the engine off, key on engine off, I got maybe 55 and definitely not over 60. And when I ran the engine and did a snap throttle, I don't think that the fuel pressure even went above 60 at all. So most likely, I think what I need to do is start with a fuel pump, because we're not even reaching that minimum fuel pressure to open up those poppet injectors, if it still has poppet injectors. That doesn't really apply if the vehicle's been upgraded to multi-point fuel injectors, but the only way to know that that had happened is if you took it apart. So if we assume it still has the old poppet injectors, then we have too low of fuel pressure to open them. If you know anything about these old Vortec engines, is that they had poppet injectors originally, so I wonder if that's why we're having a lack of fuel flow under a load, is we have a low enough fuel pressure from the pump that it is unable to open those poppet injectors. I mean, I have enough to condemn the fuel pump. I have enough in my hand. I have low pressure and a terrible electrical pattern on the scope, and the fact that the pump is very, very noisy. So I may just tell him that we need to start with a fuel pump and go from there. It would be great if we could do the injector upgrade on these old Vortec injectors, but that's not necessarily needed until we have a failure in there. Usually I'll do the upgrade if there's actually a reason to go in there. Take the intake off and replace them. I'm going to recommend a plugs, wires, cap, and rotor, and do a tune-up also. So I think I'm going to start with a fuel pump on this one. Listen to this pump when I turn the key on. Oh, man. Don't sound too good. Gotta show off the cool shirt I'm wearing today. So unfortunately, the customer has declined repairs. When he came in originally, he saw, well, my transmission's slipping, right? Sometimes if a customer comes to you and they already have an idea of what they think it is or what somebody has told them it is, you know what I mean? They will not take anybody's word for it. Even though I'm a diagnostic specialist and I work on some of the hardest, most challenging diagnostic situations all day, every day, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I get it wrong. But I feel pretty confident that this vehicle does need a fuel pump, and if you don't want to take my word for it, what can I do, right? Move on. See you later.